green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
You got your Mega Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Bird 65 on a Football Friday. Yes, we are going to talk about the game coming up on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. That's for darn sure. Eagles go out as a 9-point favorite into the Windy City. So can they get to 13-1? That is what we'll be breaking down for you over the next couple hours. I just want to do this at the top of the show, and then hopefully we can quasi put it to bed. I don't know if we can, but we can try. The off-field conversation about Jalen Hurts' MVP status continues when Micah Parsons comes out and attempts to explain why he said what he said the other day. I think it merits some discussion here. John, he said kind of what you and I were saying leading up to today's show all week. He's a defensive guy. What did you think? He was going to come in and sing the praises of Jalen? Oh, my God. We've got Jalen Hurts on the schedule 2 weeks from now. I don't know why we even show up. He's that good. I think that we should just forfeit the game now. Of course, he's a defensive guy. And that's what he explained. Yeah, I'm a defensive guy, and I'm going to give the Eagles defense a little credit. Why? Because I appreciate defense. I'm a defensive guy. I look at everything through a defensive lens. So, yeah, that's why I said what I said about the Eagles. I was giving a little credit to everybody.
Yeah. That's not that. And I said that, to me, that's not the problem. And the problem for the Cowboys is magnified by how the Eagles handle this. And I talked to Miles Sanders about it yesterday because Miles is Micah's buddy. Obviously, those Penn State guys run deep.
Right.
And Micah, Micah praised Miles as well. He looked at me and he smiled and he said, "Who are they playing this week?" And I said, "Jacksonville." And he said, "Maybe they should worry about Jacksonville." And he said he's my dog and all that stuff with Micah. But same thing Jordan Mailata said, except Jordan threw an F in there. I don't know who the F they're playing, but they should focus on them. That's why you don't do that stuff, because it explodes. And Mike is in there and he's getting all the questions and all that. And I said the Cowboys fans probably dislike him because he gave so much respect to the Eagles offense as a whole. The Eagles fans hate him because they think he disrespected the quarterback. That's why you do Nick Saban. That's why Jalen Hurts does. And he gave a 5-word answer. Rat poison. You stay away from it. That's the problem to me from Mike McCarthy's standpoint, the Dallas Cowboys. Do those shows after the season, or if you go on them, and you got to be like Jalen. But in the long run, obviously, it's much ado about nothing. I think Chris Sims now took the baton again.
Oh yeah,
and all these questions are right there about definitions, Jody. Like, what's your definition of MVP? My definition of MVP, John McMullen's is, all right, who's having the best season? And that's why I think Jalen Hurts is the MVP. It's not about, do I still think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback? Yeah, I do. If Eagle fans want to get mad at that, get mad at that. I do. I think Patrick Mahomes is a better player. I think Jalen Hurts is the MVP this year. It's not about supporting cast. Supporting cast helps. I think he's having the best season. So some people say, is it the most important player to the team? Is it the most valuable player to the team? Is it guy with the most talent, just the best player? Or is it the guy having the best season? It all depends on your definition.
Yep.
But whether he finishes first or he finishes second, he's having a damn good season. And it doesn't matter for all these goofballs moving goalposts because they want to make themselves right. Yeah, move all the goalposts you want, Chris Sims. He's having a great season.
Right. And that annoys me more than what Micah Parsons did. If I'm an Eagle fan and I'm just judging from afar, what is this guy talking about? I'm more ticked off at what Sims said than what Parsons said, because at least Parsons is a player. So he has to look at it through the lens of a player. Chris Sims is now a football analyst. He's a former player, but he's a football analyst. That's his job. So that's what he does. He's trying to stir the pot. He doesn't have to worry about bulletin board material and how he's going to affect a future opponent. He should know better than that. And he does. He's a former quarterback, and he's a
former quarterback who's an analyst. And if you go all the way back to last year, he didn't have Jalen in his top 40. Everybody was upset by that, which was ridiculous. He's trying to make himself right by diminishing what Jalen Hurts does because of his supporting cast. And, by the way, I think they would be a good team or a playoff level team potentially with Gardner Minshew. But they wouldn't
I don't know.
They wouldn't be 12-1. They'd be struggling. They'd have a chance, like Washington has a chance and the Giants have a chance and maybe Detroit and maybe Seattle. They'd have a chance to make the playoffs, but they wouldn't be like this. They wouldn't be like this.
Yeah, that comparison, and then he laid it out the way he laid it out. They'd be good. They'd be a good team if Gardner Minshew was their quarterback. He has no idea if that's the truth or not. No one does. And for him to even go there, some people got upset because they said that Micah Parsons compared him to Brock Purdy, which, oh, by the way, Brock Purdy's had 2 good games now. He's actually got a higher.
Can I take a bow here, Jody? Because I thought, and from being on this show, I picked San Francisco to be in the Super Bowl. And my reasoning was, well, I don't know if Trey Lance is going to be any good, but I think he's going to be a little bit more explosive than Jimmy Garoppolo is. And if he can just do that, they're going to be a significant Super Bowl contender. They were already a significant Super Bowl contender. Now he gets hurt, Jimmy gets hurt, and now Brock Purdy comes in, and he's been the guy who's just a little bit more explosive, a little bit more of a playmaker than Jimmy Garoppolo. And all of a sudden, they look like world beaters with this, rookie quarterbacks. I mean, that is the team. We talk about teams you don't want to play. That is the team I don't want to see in the playoffs. I hope there's an upset, and I know there's a rookie quarterback. And Kyle Shanahan, I got taught, I'm only here for the first hour. I want to talk for 6 hours because there's so much stuff I want to talk about. Kyle Shanahan, who is the best play schemer in this game, even better than Andy Reid. I would say Andy's close, but number 3 is not close. But you know what? Kyle makes a lot of mistakes, and this is I'm all over the place, and I apologize, Jody. This is what I talk about Nick Sirianni and going back to being the CEO coach. He makes a lot of mistakes, Kyle Shanahan, with game management. He's taking a timeout instead of losing a half yard, bad challenge. Yeah, he's a great play caller. He's a wizard. You saw that play to George Kittle. That's brilliant stuff. But you get bogged down. And that's why I like CEO coaches.
Understood. As do I. I feel the same way. But Purdy has looked pretty damn good. And the comp that Micah Parsons made between the Eagles and the 49ers. And don't kid yourself, that's more than it was a comparison of the Eagles team and the 49ers team than it was the quarterbacks, Purdy and Jalen Hurts. at least they didn't say you can put in the backup and still be a great story. Yeah, I got no idea what the Eagles would be with. You got more faith than what Gardner Minshew could be doing with this team than I do.
Well, I think it's a good comp in that Brock Purdy's a back. He's a third-string quarterback, and San Francisco is still good. They're still a playoff-level team where they have been. It's a very small sample size. He's going to have some troubles. I mean, at some point, he's going to have some troubles. Gardner's very experienced. But again, I'm talking about Washington level. I'm talking about the Giants level. Washington and the Giants are playing each other this week, and the winner is probably going to make the playoffs the way things look. But they're scratching and clawing to make the playoffs. The Eagles aren't scratching and clawing. I'm saying with Gardner Minshew, they are so talented. They are so good from 2 through 53 on that roster. I think they would be a playoff level team right on the cusp, not 12-1, right on the cusp of Washington territory, the Giants territory with the backup quarterback. That's how good they are. But there's a big difference between Gardner Minshew and Jalen Hurts.
That's and the way that Sims stated, I think he minimized that difference between the two. I'd be a lot more ticked off at Chris Sims, Eagle fan, than I would be at Micah Parsons for throwing shade, disrespecting, use whatever phrase you want for the Eagles quarterback this week. It doesn't seem to me that and Micah Parsons walked it back a little bit yesterday, saying, "Hey, I'm a defensive guy. I look at everything through a defensive lens. Shoot me if you believe that." And you want to talk about disrespect? I'll tell you where the Eagles got disrespected this week. And that's Micah Parsons' Penn State buddy, Miles Sanders. Every Wednesday at some point, John McMullen stays on top of it. He jumps in here on Birds 365. Oh, another Eagle Award winner. Hold on. Let me get this to you guys. Defensive Player of the Week, Brandon Graham for his 3 sacks. Miles Sanders had an unbelievable game against the Giants. He was, for me, their best player on the blowout on Sunday. Jalen Hurts is MVP, but Miles had a great day. Career high in rushing, 144 yards. He didn't get either the FedEx Ground and Air Award, which the NFL gives out every single week, which they gave to Christian McCaffrey, who didn't have near as many yards as Miles did. No career-setting day for Christian McCaffrey against a lesser squad than the Giants played, an actual team than the Eagles played, the Giants, a team above 500. And he wasn't the offensive player of the week either. They gave that to Baker Mayfield. Now, I guess I understand that because it was as weird as it was. He shows up 2 days later. He's still mumbling the plays to himself, so he knows the name of them in the huddle, and the coaches called him in verbatim right up until they shut off the microphone. And damn if you didn't march him down for 2 late touchdowns and steal a victory from the jaws of defeat. But his numbers were pedestrian over the course of the game. Miles were all-time best in his career.
Yeah, that's
so
why.
There's a guy who got shortchanged yet this week. Miles Sanders should be more ticked off about that, Eagle fans, than Micah Parsons saying, "Well, Jalen Hurts has got some good teammates around him."
Yeah, I can't get upset. I mean, Player of the Week awards they don't like to give it. It was rare for Jalen to get it 2 weeks in a row. That's like news because they don't give it to people 2 weeks in a row. They don't give the same team multiple awards on the same week. So you almost got to pick somebody. Or is it for the Eagles because they've had so many games where you could pick an offensive and defensive player of the week. They're not doing that. And a lot of it is high profile Baker's situation. It's all nonsense. It's all, it's great for the players. I shouldn't say that.
But we're getting bent out of shape about an MVP.
Well, people get bent. Like people get bent out of shape about anything. I said, I put up the video of that play, which by the way, that play is used in college football all the time from San Francisco last night. So, all football is stealing from other people. But it was just so beautiful the way San Francisco ran it. And I'm talking about the 2 fakes, and then Kittle breaks out. And he's so wide open. That's how you scheme guys open. Not that you need to scheme George Kittle open, but he schemed him open. And it's a touchdown. It's a great play. And I just put it up and said, this is why I love Kyle Shanahan so much. So, Eagles fans are going, that plays all smoke and mirrors. I got one guy on Twitter, never work against the Eagles.
What does that have to do with Miles Sanders not getting?
Well, I'm getting to the point, Jody. Eagles fans get upset about everything. Eagles fans get upset about everything. You can't get upset about Miles Sanders not being player of the week when Brandon Graham's player of the week. They don't give it to the same team. So you pick one or the other. Now, if you want to say Miles should have gotten it over Brandon, that's a more legitimate argument, but I can't get upset about people not getting players of the week. And they got a player of the week. They're not giving it to the same team. I don't think it's ever happened. Now, they've been giving out since 84. So, maybe there was a 50-0 game where somebody was so dominant. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it rarely happens. They don't give it to the same team.
Except they should have this week, in this man's opinion, just my opinion. It doesn't matter to me if an Eagles performance was the most impressive in the National Football League last week, and they happen to have a guy on offense and a guy on defense who both had the best weeks in the NFL. And yeah, I think it was slighted. If you don't want to get down into the muck and mire with me, that's okay, John. I have no problems getting there. They slighted Miles Sanders.
Well, I haven't looked about the other. I bet you there's 10 players, offensive players, actually 20 offensive players that had better weeks than Baker Mayfield. He didn't have a great week. He had one drive.
That's my point. Thanks for making it for me. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen here with you on Bird Street 65. Up next, our bud from the Inquirer, Mike Sielski, top sports columnist in town, is going to join us here on Bird Street 65. Stay with us.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense during retirement? Are most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks? Taxes are historically low today, but we're facing significant headwinds in the future. Do you have a plan? The Thrive Financial team has more than 100 years of experience helping people across the Delaware Valley with forward-looking tax planning. Learn how to shift your money from forever tax to no or low tax accounts. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
Appreciate you being aboard on Birds 365, a Football Friday Jody McDonald, John McMullen, joined by Mike Sielski, lead sports columnist from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Mike, if I need to apologize, I'll apologize for my contribution to continuing this Micah Parsons story here in Philadelphia. Did we all drop the ball and just let Micah Parsons dictate to us that we should be talking about something other than the Chicago Bears? Like I said, if I need to apologize, I got sucked in. Did you?
I did not get sucked in, Jody.
And I'm proud of you.
This to me speaks. I'm actually writing a column about this right now that's going to go on Inquirer.com Saturday morning. This to me speaks to the big problem with the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles.
Really?
They are boring. They are boring. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're 12-1.
Too good. Too
good.
You
know, I need a wide receiver doing sit-ups in the driveway here. I need conflict between former best buddies Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I need the offensive lineman recording a death metal album and not a Christmas album. I need something to get a little bit interested in, because right now this team is kind of too good to get worked up about.
Yeah, that's how I am. I can't get worked up about this stuff. I get more worked up about people who get worked up about it. I'm amazed at how many people care about what Chris Sims thinks, how many people care about what Micah Parsons thinks. And by the way, I told Jody, Cowboys fans are probably upset at poor Micah because he talks so glowingly about the Eagles as a whole, about how great the offensive line is and his buddy Miles Sanders and the receivers. Did everybody miss that part? This is a member of the Dallas Cowboys.
John, this was the softest trash talk I've ever heard. Like, it wasn't like he was saying that Jalen was a bad quarterback. He was basically saying that he's good, but everything around him is so much better that it's hard to give him credit for the team being 12-1. This is not a, hey, guys, Carson Wentz can't play and your team was dumb for drafting him or anything along those lines. It just was, but this is what we're reaching for. Like you said, we've got to find these morsels of somebody who, from somebody who says something other than the Eagles are the greatest team in the history of teams and Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback since leather was invented.
And to no one's surprise, Jalen Hurts said, when asked about it, we're playing the Bears this week. Can we talk about the Bears? Let's get to the Bears. We got to kind of focus on the Bears. The Bears are our opponent this week, not yet the Dallas Cowboys. And nobody should be surprised by that, because he is, in the short time, relatively short, 2 years now, year and change, shown more narrow focus and ability to stay in his lane and on task than maybe any quarterback the Philadelphia Eagles have ever had. You've been here for a while. I've been here for a while. John's been here for a while. Certainly any during our time. No one can compare to this guy with being on task for what his job is, and that's continually win football games, which he's done this year 11 out of 12 times.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jody. And I was thinking about this the other day about kind of the moment in time that we're in and Jalen's age. Carson was guarded, right? But you could chalk that up to him being a guy who had grown up in North Dakota and then now was in a big market in Philadelphia. So maybe he wasn't certain how to handle the media and things like that. I think Jalen is a different case in that not only did he go to Alabama, which probably got as much scrutiny on a day-to-day basis as the Eagles do, certainly nationally and certainly within its fan base and its media market. But he's also 24 years old. He's come up in a time when it is customary for an athlete to guard his or her image in the age of Twitter and social media and all these kinds of things. Millennials, if you want to call them that, or I don't know what the name of the generation is, are much more protective of that. They don't come in with any expectation in the way that, say, Donovan McNabb or Nick Foles did of, hey, I have to talk to these reporters and these media members who aren't connected to the team directly and who aren't trying to help me win the game or succeed. They're just here to ask me questions, whatever those questions might be. Jalen is very sensitive to that and very protective of that. There's a reason he calls us rat poison. It's, he came up in the Nick Saban sort of way of thinking of keep your guard up at all times. And I think that goes a long way to explaining why he interacts with us in the way that he does.
Yeah. It's all Nick Saban. It's all rat poison. And the Eagles are very good at it. And I do give them credit. And better than most, Mike, you can't control other people's perceptions. I always say. So, I think it's very smart to use the Nick Saban sort of template and try to keep things in-house as much as possible. It's not fun for us, but I think it's smart. Jordan Mailata got asked about the stuff this week, and he said, gave a little F word and say, I don't even know who Dallas is effing playing, but maybe they should focus on that. I asked Miles yesterday. It's like the same thing. He smiled at me because he's Micah's buddy. Smiled at me and said, who are they playing? And I said, Jacksonville. Maybe they should worry about Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Does this all stem from Nick Sirianni? Does he have all these guys on the same page? Or is it just sort of innate that this team knows, let's keep it in-house?
I think it's a combination of both things, John. I think, the leadership in the locker room is obvious. You have guys like Jason Kelce and Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox who have been through all this before. They've seen what works. They know how to be playful in and with the media in a way that doesn't generate the kind of headlines that a team doesn't want to have. For instance, I know you saw this on Twitter yesterday. Jason did his podcast with his brother Travis.
Tremendous tweet.
Right.
Tremendous.
And they were talking about Nick Foles and how he should, the trophy for the Super Bowl MVP should be after Nick Foles. And, people can look into why they said that, and it's hilarious and it's funny. And it's the kind of thing that doesn't tick anybody off on any other teams. And, I think we can overstate sometimes how much a coach sets the culture for a team. I think more often than not, it does come down to the leadership within that locker room, the captains of the locker room, so to speak. And when you have people like Kelce and Graham and Hurts to a lesser degree, just because he's young and hasn't been around as much, those guys are the tone setters. And those guys are going to make it clear that, hey, we don't do that kind of stuff here. We keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak, except for Mailata, who I think his streak of giving interviews in which he drops an F-bomb is now approaching Joe DiMaggio levels. He's really keeping on that really well.
Yeah, but when you drop the F-bomb and it's followed by mate, it just feels
that's true.
Soft.
It softens the blow. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of softening the blow, how bad is the blow going to be on the Bears this week? Because, Mike, I'll be honest with you. Over the last couple of days, I've been thinking, the Eagles better be careful. This has got trap game written all over it. The Bears are bad. The Eagles know the Bears are bad. Everybody knows the Bears are bad. They've got the Cowboys in 10 days. They better be careful that it's an NFL team going out there. A not good NFL team, but an NFL team just the same. And then all this off-the-field stuff becomes a topic of conversation and gets the Eagles to narrow focus and stay tuned and being able to point to the Cowboys like, shut up, worry about the Jaguars. They're going to crush the Bears on Sunday, are they not?
I think they are, Jody, and I think it's to their advantage that the following game is in Dallas against the Cowboys. I think that helps because if they lose to the Bears, suddenly that Christmas Eve game takes on a really outsized importance, because then all of a sudden the possibility of them falling behind the Cowboys or losing the division lead becomes really real. So I have to think that Sirianni and the veterans in the locker room are spreading the word that, look, guys, we can't slip up this week. We shouldn't slip up this week. This team has the worst passing offense in the NFL. It has one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL. There's no reason we shouldn't go in here and take care of business. Get your minds right, get your preparation right, and let's make sure we're 13-1 heading to AT&T Stadium on Christmas Eve, because the Cowboys are close enough and hold enough tiebreakers that if the Eagles do slip up, all of a sudden we're going to have a real discussion here about meaningful regular season games.
Yeah. Do you think that helps that Dallas is there in the rearview mirror? Because this is the trappiest of all trappy games, Mike. I mean, this is it. But I've been looking for these games all year. I thought Tennessee was a trap game. They came up banged up. I bought my own hype. I thought that was going to be a close game, and you
weren't the only one, John.
Yeah, and they just destroyed them. I've been incredibly impressed with this team's ability to handle things like that. And this will be another test. But you've been around Philadelphia for a long time. Is this the best Eagles team you've ever seen?
It's pretty damn close, man. Like I said, the fact that it's boring speaks to how good it is.
Yep.
I mean, go back to 2017. Doubts started to creep in once Wentz got injured.
Oh, yeah.
Major doubts. I mean, I thought they were done for. I really did.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
It was like a wake at the Nova complex.
It was. Go back to 2004. Terrell Owens gets hurt against the Cowboys, and you think, oh boy, there was trepidation heading into the postseason because of the previous 3 years of history of them losing in the NFC Championship game. And the gap between them and the rest of the conference is wide, but how much does losing T.O. close it? This year doesn't have that. It's just been kind of, this is what we do. We show up on Sunday and we kick your butts and we go to the next Sunday and everybody gets along, and the big offseason acquisitions aren't making any waves. It isn't as if A.J. Brown and Hassan Reddick and the other guys who they brought in have had to adjust or have there's been any rifts or controversies or anything like that. I mean, it's just been so smooth. Now you can look at that and say, okay, in Philadelphia, we're always looking to the sky for the anvil that's going to fall on our heads, like in the Looney Tunes cartoon. Yeah. And so maybe something is coming, but there's no indication that it's presented itself so far. And kind of the cold efficiency with which this team goes out there and just beats whoever is in front of them, it's hard to argue that this isn't the best team I've seen.
Mike, in the spirit of political correctness and overly attentiveness and getting our feathers in an uproar too quickly, aka Micah Parsons disrespecting Jalen Hurts, I said yesterday on the show, I think we need to change the term garbage time, because it's just flat out disrespectful to the players who are actually playing in that time. And Eagles 2 weeks in a row have been able to put forth what most people see as garbage time for some of their young and up and coming players. I decided we needed to go with a different name, like, what the hell did I call it yesterday? Designated growth snaps. Rather than garbage time, called them designated growth snaps for the young guys, for Nakobe Dean and Zach Mack and Josh Jobe and the like. How many designated growth snaps are the Eagles reserves going to get to play because they're so far ahead of the Bears?
Well, look, Jody, I mean, I would think probably half of the fourth quarter we're looking at, right? I mean, that's what they basically got last week against the Giants. And those are good things. That's a good thing, to make sure that those guys are getting some work, getting some action. It doesn't hurt to have Gardner Minshew taking a few snaps here and there just to stay a little bit sharp. There's nothing wrong with that. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will matter in the end. It doesn't necessarily mean that if something were to happen, God forbid, to Jalen Hurts or another important player, that the guy behind him wouldn't be able to step in anyway. We saw that, for instance, in 2017. Nick Foles didn't get a lot of work before Carson Wentz tore his knee up. And, by the midpoint of the NFC Championship game, it was like, holy God, the Eagles had the best quarterback in the league, and he was sitting on the bench the entire time behind the second best quarterback in the league. So, it's a good thing.
The winner of the Tallywhacker Trophy.
There you go. The winner of the Tallywhacker Trophy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So where are you? But just the Eagles don't look ahead, but we can look ahead. If they finish this thing off, if they're the number one seed and the road to the Super Bowl goes through Lincoln Financial Field, where are you in the rest versus rust argument? Do you sit guys? Do you sit? Now, I think I mentioned on the show, I think people forget, the they say preseason environment. You don't have 90 players. You don't have 85 players. You only have 53. And last year, people go back to last year in the Dallas game, and they clinched the playoffs, but they still have the COVID rules. So if you remember, they put about a dozen players on the COVID list. You can't do that anymore. So some guys have to play. But you can sit key players. You have a bye, though, and you start thinking, well, if you're not playing against New Orleans, if you're not playing against the Giants, then you have a week off. Rest versus rust, Mike Sielski.
I've seen rest work enough, John, that I think you go with rest. It worked in 2004 when the Eagles were 13-1, and Andy Reid basically sat all his starters. The final two games, one in St. Louis against a bad Rams team, and then the end of the season against the Bengals. They had a bye week. They came out. They looked fine. You saw the same thing in 2017, basically, rested all the starters in that final game against the Cowboys. We saw the nascent greatness of Nate Sudfeld in that Cowboys game.
Yeah,
just ask Jeffrey Lurie. Yeah, just ask Jeffrey Lurie about that, his fond memories of the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld. And they came out and played pretty well against the Falcons. I think especially now, John, with the regular season being 17 games, you take an opportunity to rest guys if you can and get them fresh. And look, is it possible that a team that rested starters will come out and look rusty during the course of its first playoff game back? And do you take that chance? Yeah, I suppose you do. But remember, too, that the trend and the ethos now in the NFL is to get those practice reps in. Remember back in the preseason, we heard Nick talking about how the reps that the starters and players were getting in practice, mental reps, physical reps, film study time, was every bit as important as actually having them play in the preseason games themselves. And I think the same principle would probably apply late in the season. If you're staying sharp at practice and in the film room, then you can afford to sit out, 3/4 of the regular season finale.
I'm glad you added "and the film room" because let's be honest, the Eagles don't exactly bust it in practice. So those reps that Sirianni may be relating to are not comparable to what most teams do or used to do around the National Football League. And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit for you. Yeah, they went all JV squad last year. How'd that work out going down to Tampa for the playoff game? Rather than go back to 2004 or other years, let's go to the most recent example, which was last year. It was 31-0 before you blinked. And yes, Tampa was better than they were. And everyone should have acknowledged that ahead of time, which not all Eagle fans did. Some of them actually said, "Bring on Brady," which was stupid. But they played Tampa much tougher earlier in the season when they weren't playing well. They played them at the end of the season when they had actually gotten a turnaround and were playing well and got abused. Do you not factor that into your thinking?
Nope, not at all. First of all, they didn't play Tampa that well the first time around. Tampa got out to a 3-touchdown lead and, sleptwalk through the second half of that game. Jody, secondly,
three touchdown lead is not as great as a 31-0 lead, is it?
Now we're really splitting hairs. The other thing too,
more than splitting hairs.
Yeah. The other thing too, Jody, is that I would argue that the Eagles last season and the Steelers last season, who were the 2 7th seeds in the playoffs, were not really playoff teams. They were not. I mean, they both got their doors blown off by their respective teams that they were playing. The Steelers by the Chiefs, I think it was, and maybe the Chiefs, I forget. Anyway, the point being that the gap between that iteration of the Eagles and that iteration of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was so wide that, Nick Sirianni could have played all his starters in that final week against the Cowboys, and it wouldn't have mattered. They could have been as sharp as they needed to be. Jalen Hurts was not equipped to win that postseason game. That team was not equipped to win that postseason game. Yeah, he wasn't. He had the ankle thing, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're talking apples and oranges here.
Yeah. I agree with that part of it. Yeah, they just weren't ready. And, the NFL, that's one of the things. One of the most impressive parts about Jalen Hurts is the leap he took from the offseason and the things he did. We always talk about his work ethic. But from the standpoint of the organization, you mentioned Jeffrey Lurie. They do some goofy things. He calls Nate Sudfeld unstoppable. We know Howie Roseman, the sort of ebbs and flows. It's like an EKG. He's the greatest GM in the history of the world. Everybody wants him out. But this organization, Mike, is over the Jeffrey Lurie ownership era, is arguably right there with whether you want to talk about New England, Green Bay as the standard. But here's the difference. New England had Tom Brady. Green Bay had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. The Eagles have done this, different coaches, different quarterbacks, consistent playoff appearances, runs. People will say only one Super Bowl, which I hate, but nonetheless, they're in a position to make a run at another. You're around the Phillies, you're around the Sixers, you're around the Flyers. This organization, how important is that to the success of this team?
Oh, it matters a ton, John. And I think you have two prime examples that are very similar that speak to what you're getting at. The year they went to the Super Bowl, most recently, 2017, what had they done 2 years earlier? They were in major crisis mode. They fired Chip Kelly. Jeffrey Lurie had rubble at his feet. And within 2 years, they were hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Think back 2 years ago from right now. It was 2020. Carson Wentz was making it clear the Eagles were going to have to trade him. And we were all kind of in this mode of like, they're not really going to trade him, are they? And then it inched along to the point where it was like, yeah, they're going to have to trade him. This guy who they just signed to a 4-year, $128 million extension, they're going to have to move him because he doesn't want to play here anymore. And look at and they brought this chaos on themselves by drafting Jalen Hurts and misreading how Carson Wentz would react to that. And here we are 2 years later, and they're 12-1 and a favorite to get to the Super Bowl and win it. So I think that speaks to what you're saying about their ability to kind of steer the ocean liner out of the way of the iceberg in a way that most organizations, both in the NFL and locally, have not been able to do. You referenced the Sixers and the Flyers. I mean, my God, the Flyers haven't been able to adjust to the salary cap era of the National Hockey League since the league instituted the salary cap in 2005. And the Sixers had a golden opportunity with Sam Hinkie initiating the process to build themselves into perennially a team that can compete for a championship every year. And they're still short of that. You know, they're much better than they were, and they win 50 games every year, and they have Joel Embiid, but they still managed to fall short. So, yeah, I think the Eagles deserve a ton of credit for what they've done. It's easy for us to be locked into the nearsightedness of Philadelphia, of, just us fixating on the Eagles. But sometimes you need to take a step back and compare the Eagles to other organizations around the NFL, and you realize how successful they are, relatively speaking.
And, oh, by the way, just to add to the organizational praise and one individual in particular, that would be the owner, at least according to John. And I trust him on this, and he's got his sources. Josh McDaniels was almost the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. If Jeff Lurie hadn't said, no, Howie, I don't think we're going to go in that direction, I don't think we'd be talking about a 12-1 football team. If
Jody,
the coach.
Consider this. Imagine the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles with Josh McDaniels as their head coach and Russell Wilson as their starting quarterback.
Yeah. And JG would still be here. JG was very close. When you heard about all the Jonathan Gannon stuff, the Eagles were going to hire Jonathan Gannon before they were going to hire Nick Sirianni. That's because they were going to hire Josh McDaniels, and those two are so close. So, you go back to Doug Peterson's season as well. The Eagles wanted Adam Gase, and he had too many demands coming off Chip Kelly, as you mentioned, Mike. And they were like, we can't give you all this. And they kind of dodged a bullet there. Ben McAdoo famously was on his way down the Jersey Turnpike. They had a welcome bouquet, welcome basket there with muffins. And they got Doug Peterson because the Giants convinced Ben McAdoo to come back. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. The organization is great, but sometimes you need a little bit of luck.
Yeah, maybe it's better. Maybe they should, if and when Sirianni, leaves or gets fired or something happens, maybe they should just go into the process saying, okay, whoever our first choice is, disregard him and go with our third or fourth guy, because that seems to work for them.
All right, Mike Sielski, I need to confirm this from you right here, right now. Are you rooting for the Dallas Cowboys this week? Because if the Cowboys lose and the Eagles win, talk about the Eagles being boring. That would just take the edge off the matchup coming up between the Eagles and the Cowboys. So you're going to be rooting against Doug Peterson on Sunday?
I want something, Jody. I want Miles Sanders to start fumbling again.
Ooh.
I mean, this is what we're talking about here.
That's Mike Sielski fans.
Look, all I'm saying is I'm being tongue in cheek here, but you guys get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, even Miles Sanders used to put the ball on the ground 3 or 4 times a season. He hasn't fumbled once. I mean, I remember the good old days of Ryan Matthews. That dude couldn't walk across the cafeteria at the NovaCare complex without spilling his avocado rice bowl all over the place. You know, I mean, it was that bad. So, you know, I just want something to pique our interest and create some drama.
Remember Matt Jones, who was here for, I don't know, a couple weeks? I remember being in the locker room with Matt, and he went on this dissertation about the eagle claw, which is one of the ball security techniques. The Eagles have it still up in their facility with some of the signs. And Matt's talking about this, and then he goes out there, fumbles first game. Boom. All this ball security talk. Eagles rep it. You know, even Nick today, we rep it. We're better than I use that term luck, Mike. You know, coaches hate to hear that. And I get why. But the stars do have to align at some point. And you talk about Miles Sanders, and I'll bring it back to Jalen Hurts again. He's thrown 3 interceptions. Who saw that coming?
Nobody did. And to your point, though, John, I would say that with Hurts, it's less about luck, because I keep thinking back over the season, and maybe there's 1 or 2 plays that stand out in your guys' memory, but I have a hard time remembering any plays, any throws that Jalen has made where you go, oh, that was risky. He shouldn't have done that. He really put the ball in a tenuous situation there. He just doesn't do it. He doesn't do dumb stuff. And that's half the battle when it comes to winning games in this league.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, I want to get you on the record about the Eagles and one specific individual having an effect on the rest of the National Football League going forward. This whole Micah Parsons, Sims putting his MVP status in question. It should be just background noise. The one thing you can absolutely positively say about Jalen Hurts is he's the most improved quarterback in the National Football League. Not even close. Orlovsky went so far as to compare him to Drew Brees. People get their nose out of joint because he gets compared to Brock Purdy and to their own backup Gardner Minshew. He was also compared to Drew Brees this week. That's pretty damn good. Yeah. If I'm Jalen Hurts, I kind of like that someone compared me to Drew Brees. He's the most improved quarterback in the NFL by far. And Orlovsky went as far to say he's the most improved quarterback he's ever seen on a year-to-year basis. And we all believe it's because of Jalen Hurts, that he put in the time and effort, that he's a guy. Sirianni this week talking about anytime you show up at the Eagle facility, Jalen Hurts is there. 2:00 in the morning, Jalen Hurts is there. He never leaves. He's there all the time because he's so dedicated and so motivated to become the best player that he possibly can. Will that be the mantra of other quarterbacks in the NFL this offseason, that if you put in the time and effort, you really do get to cash the check? You get to pay dividends with it. Will Jalen Hurts have that kind of effect with the improved level of his play on the rest of the National Football League going forward?
I think he'll have a different effect, Jody. I don't know if he'll inspire other young quarterbacks to buckle down and work hard. And, you know, I don't know if Zach Wilson, for instance, is going to look at Jalen Hurts and say, boy, if I really put my nose to the grindstone, I'll become the quarterback that I think I already am, you know, in the case of Zach Wilson. But I think there's a different twist on this. I think what it's going to do is cause teams and decision makers, general managers, coaches to hold out longer for the possibility that a quarterback who isn't playing great in his first or second season in the league might get it in his third or fourth, if you know what I mean. Like, teams are under such pressure because they want to win within the window of a quarterback's rookie contract. They're under such pressure to make a quick decision about a guy, right? We drafted Mitch Trubisky. We have to know whether he is the guy or not. And if he shows any signs that he isn't, we got to cut bait with him before we sign him to this contract that's going to be ridiculous. I think what Jalen does is cause teams to say, hey, wait a minute, we might have to give this guy just another year because maybe then the leap is coming. And Jalen isn't the only quarterback who's done this. Look at Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? That guy was spraying passes all over Orchard Park for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, he's one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the league and is making throws that nobody else can make. So I think that's the after effect of what happened here with Hurts.
I go back to organizations though, Mike. I think you're right. I think that's how people should look at it. But I don't think there's enough patience in most of these organizations, and there's so much pressure. You bring up Mitch Trubisky in Chicago this week. Eagles obviously facing the Bears. That is a really, really rabid football market typically. People have a difficult time being patient when all that pressure is on them. And again, I point back to Jeffrey Lurie. But last one from me, Mike, at Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com, WIP. Listen to him there on the weekends with Glenn McDowell. Listen to Jody on the weekends with Glenn McDowell. You mentioned Miles Sanders. If he is going to have that fumble in a bit, I'll get you in trouble. I want to hold you accountable. Like Jalen.
I knew I shouldn't have said that. You can't you can't joke about Philadelphia sports. It's like hand grenades. You can't do it.
You can't do it. If there is going to be an upset, if there is going to be a disappointment before the Super Bowl, what team is going to upset the Eagles?
Oh, the obvious one, San Francisco 49ers. Yeah. I mean, look, you can all see it. We can all see it. Kyle Shanahan's a really good coach. That team has all the makings, all the elements in place. It's got an unknown at quarterback right now, but it seems like Shanahan kind of doesn't mind that. He wants a certain kind of guy, and he hasn't quite gotten them yet because Trey Lance hasn't been healthy and hasn't developed yet. But that's the team. It's the obvious one, but it's the true one. I mean, that team can win any number of ways. It went into Green Bay in last year's playoffs and won a game without scoring an offensive touchdown. True. It probably should have beaten the Rams in the championship game.
Yeah,
exactly. It probably should have won that Super Bowl 2 or 3 years ago against the Chiefs.
They outplayed Kansas City.
They beat them up and down the field. Yeah. So that would be the team that if I were an Eagles fan would give me the willies.
All right, last one for me. Could you pick Ian Book out of a lineup?
Yeah.
Who?
Ian Book.
No, I could not. I haven't seen him in the locker room lately either. So, no. To answer your question, Jody, no.
Ian's always in the locker room. You're just in the back, Mike, with the
I'm hanging out. I'm talking Christmas albums with Kelsey and Miley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all go to the back because the cool kids are in the back. Yeah.
That's right, man. That's right.
I bring it up because according to Chris Sims, if Jalen were going to go down, Gardner could step right in and play. But then Gardner could go down, and before you know it, the Eagles' hopes and dreams are pinned to Ian Book. So I think I got to learn what he looks like because I couldn't pick him out of the lineup. I'm glad to hear I have company.
Now, look, Jody, I mean, it's nice to bat around ideas like that and what ifs and all that, but when was the last time
it's not all that what if, Mike? Brock Purdy is leading the 49ers to victory. They're down to their third string guy, so shit happens.
Yeah, but we're late enough in the season where that took Trey Lance getting hurt week 1 or week 2 and Garoppolo getting hurt in week whatever, 14 or 15. I don't think we're going to see a repeat of 2002 where everybody was like, AJ Feely, oh my God. But, I've been wrong before. Like I said, I thought they were dead meat when Wentz went down in Los Angeles.
We all did. We all did. The Eagles did. The Eagles thought they were done. They thought they were cooked. That moment truly showed that was, and look, I get the love for Nick Foles,
But my goodness, the coaching job that Peterson and Frank Reich did in the aftermath of that,
John
to kind of,
DiFilippo.
and John, to rework the offense. To me, it's the most missed aspect of that entire championship run.
Yeah. They rebuilt the whole offense.
The Falcons, the Vikings, and the Patriots had no idea what the Eagles were running offensively because they completely revamped their play calling scheme and everything to accommodate Foles, and it led to a championship.
So you tell me Philly special wasn't in the playbook till Foles took over?
Philly, baby.
Philly. Would they have run it in that situation with Carson Wentz? I don't know.
Maybe not.
Carson would have regarded it as a slap in the face. How can you not put the ball in my hands? Yeah. I'm the franchise guy. I'm North Dakota tough.
You're joking, obviously, Mike, but I think you're right. They wouldn't because they felt they wouldn't have needed to do it.
Exactly.
They had the MVP potentially.
Hey, would Wentz have suggested it? Let's remember it was Foles who was the guy who suggested that play.
Very true. Mike, we always appreciate when you come on and suggest what we should be talking about, because I'm about done talking about Micah Parsons, but I had to bring it up with you too. Thank you very much for the insight today. We will get you back on before the playoffs start. Appreciate it, bud.
Thanks, Mike.
Always enjoy it, guys. Thanks. Be well.
Pleasure. Our pleasure. Mike Sielski here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, you're exiting stage left. You're getting over to get...
Got to talk to the head coach. Talk about how he keeps everybody on the same page away from the rat poison, Jody.
You're going to get him to whisper sweet nothings in your ear off the record. Is that how this works?
Hopefully.
All right, Johnny Mac, thank you much. When we come back, it'll be Tone. Tone's going to jump in, take Johnny Mac's spot. We do have a Bears guest coming up as well. Keep it right here on Birds 365.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense during retirement? Are most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks? Taxes are historically low today, but we're facing significant headwinds in the future. Do you have a plan? The Thrive Financial team has more than 100 years of experience helping people across the Delaware Valley with forward-looking tax planning. Learn how to shift your money from forever tax to no or low tax accounts. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
You're streaming in on a Football Friday here on Birds 365. Jody Mack with Tone Shields hopping in for Johnny Mack, who's off to catch the coach's Friday press availability. So Tone will be sitting in for the next hour. Coming up in about 20 minutes from now, Zach Pearson from BearsReport.com. I never had the pleasure of talking to Zach, but Johnny Mack got him to agree to come on the show last night. And you told us, Tone, before the show, he was on with Ricky Saratella earlier this week.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he did a really good job, man. Gave us a lot of insight on the Chicago Bears. And I mean, the Chicago Bears are a team that don't really have too much to write home about. But again, it's a team that you don't want to slip up against. You don't want that loss on your resume if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles.
Understood. And yeah, it doesn't matter who they're playing. The Eagles are looking to just pile up the wins until they get to the point where they've locked home field advantage throughout the playoffs. You haven't, and for those who don't know, Don is our producer. We shoot the breeze with him for just a couple minutes before the show starts. When the show's over and done with, he's got to go to Saratella's show, so we don't get to shoot the breeze with Don as much as we used to. They keep him so busy producing shows here. Haven't gotten your take yet on the fact that the Bears are not good. They're 3-10, and they are 3-10 by merit. They didn't even hide the fact that they're not worried about wins this year. It's one thing to trade Khalil Mack before the season starts and get the draft picks and try and change the look of your team before the season even gets underway. But they trade Roquan Smith in season, their best defensive player. Before the year started, they traded their best defensive player. So Roquan Smith gets elevated to their best defensive player, and they turn around and trade him as well. This is not a good football team the Eagles are playing this week, Tone.
No, not at all. And you brought up Roquan Smith and Khalil Mack. And I know Robert Quinn hasn't really had the year that we all would prefer, but, you know, they traded away their top 3 defensive assets. And if that's not a team that's rebuilding, I don't know what is. You know, they've accumulated some assets, you know, in return. They've got some picks in return for those guys. They freed up a lot of cap space. They're going to have a lot of money to spend. So I'm really curious to see how they look next year. They're clearly rebuilding. They're not shy about that. They have a 3-10 record. And I just have a hard time believing that this team will be able to even sniff the Philadelphia Eagles jockstrap. I just don't think they're even on the same planet. They're not even breathing the same air, Jody.
Yeah, that's why the Eagles are a 9-point favorite coming in. And basically, they pinned all their hopes and dreams going forward on a young quarterback who I happen to be a big fan of. I didn't even know he was going to be as good a runner as he's turned out to be. I used to take off every once in a while and make plays with his legs at Ohio State, but not like he has done this year for the Chicago Bears. And they're asking him to carry the whole load, specifically on offense. Mooney, their best receiver, is on IR for the year. Claypool, the guy who I liked as an addition. They traded a second-round pick to get him. Some people thought it was an overpayment. I didn't. He hasn't exactly kicked in yet in Chicago, and he's missed the last 2 days of practice. Who the hell's going to make any offensive plays for the Bears this week?
Justin Fields. You know, they have essentially nobody.
How many times is he going to run it? 25?
He's gonna literally become a running back this Sunday. I'm telling you that right now. And you know, I'm really curious to see how the Philadelphia Eagles deal with that. You know, the closest they've dealt with that throughout the season is probably Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones. We know the Giants love to scheme Daniel Jones running lanes, and the Eagles did a pretty good job containing him. He really didn't get off that much running the ball. And I would anticipate, or I would like to anticipate, right, that the Philadelphia Eagles would be able to limit Justin Fields, but Justin Fields is by far the best runner or the best athlete they may see at the quarterback position this season. And, you know, he's approaching 1,000 yards rushing, and there's still 4 games left to be played in this season. I think he has about 920, 930, something like that. He's pretty damn close to 1,000 rushing yards, and he is the offense. You know, being in Chicago, he's been forced to grow up really fast. You know, they placed a lot on his shoulders early, and some would argue Chicago is where quarterbacks go to die. You know, where has Chicago developed a quarterback? The best quarterback in Chicago history that I've seen in my lifetime, right, is the guy that got them to that Super Bowl was Rex Grossman. Maybe Jake Cutler. I don't know. It's just they've struggled.
Man before your time?
Say that one more time.
Jim McMahon before your time?
I was born in 94, so.
Yeah, you know Jim McMahon. And oh, by the way, Jim McMahon, very famous quarterback, a lot of personality, but he really wasn't all that good a quarterback. The Super Bowl on the back of their defense, and McMahon didn't screw it up, and they handed it off to Walter Payton. So for those of you like Toad who are a little bit younger, yes, Jim McMahon is certainly the most recognizable of the Bears quarterbacks over the last 30
What do you think it is, though, Jody? Like, why do you think it's so hard for Chicago to find a quarterback? It seems like they're allergic to it.
It's a very fair question. It's got to be more than just coincidence, but there's some coincidence involved because they've changed coaches, they've changed general managers, they've changed presidents. The weather is a lake effect. Is that what you're telling me, that they just can't do it because the windy city, you can't throw the football? I think it's just been a series of inept individuals running the franchise more than anything else.
Yeah, you may be right about that, but I think about Buffalo. Buffalo's not an easy place to throw the ball. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just so hard to. I've never seen an organization struggle so much at figuring out a position. Some organizations fall into a quarterback. You know what I mean? But I pray, because I like Justin Fields, and I think he's extremely talented. I think he's probably one of the more talented quarterbacks out of his draft class. And I hope they don't ruin this young man's career. I hope they don't ruin his long-term health or his long-term sustainability, because they are running him into the dirt. And one thing I will say, though, I am pleased with the coaching staff beginning to lean into what he does well and beginning to build the offensive identity around him. I felt like his first year and part of this season, they sort of tried to force that square peg into a round hole, kind of turn him into a 5-step, 7-step drop back quarterback, when in reality, you have to get him in open space, cut the field in half, do what you can to maximize his ability. Kind of similar to what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts last season for the second part of the season.
And oh, by the way, some people would suggest that the Eagles fell into Jalen Hurts. I would not be one of them, because I liked the pick when they made it. Few and far between people go, yeah, that's a worthwhile second-round pick, because now here's where the honesty comes in. They could have an inexpensive backup for 4 years. Little did I know that by year 3, be competing for the MVP. I didn't say that, but I did say I thought it was a smart pick by the Eagles the night that they took him in the second round. So, yes, and it all has to do with expectations. The expectations, even as a second, there's a big difference between being middle of the second round and the 11th pick in the draft like Justin Fields was. So, yeah, there are much more higher expectations for a guy like Justin Fields. And at least in one aspect, he's answered the call for him this year, becoming the top running quarterback in the National Football League. But as we talked about on the other side of the ball with the Bears, they've given up their best defensive players. You even put Quinn into the mix, who, you're right, year before had 18.5 sacks. Now, when they traded him, he wasn't playing all that well for them. We know since he's gotten here to Philadelphia, he hasn't really done too much for the Eagles, and now on injured reserve. But that's got to be something heavy to weigh on a young man like Fields. He's got to carry the weight of not only the offense, but basically the defense as well. How do you think the Eagles attack this undermanned Bears defense on Sunday?
They have options. They have their pick of the litter. Let's be frank about it. Their pass defense is nothing to write home about. Their run defense is nothing to write home about. Their pass rush is nothing to write home about. I think they're bottom of the barrel.
Other than that, how'd you like to play, Mrs. Lincoln? In other words, they stink, and they stink.
I try to give these guys credit because they are pro athletes, and I always like their approach it from the perspective of they're doing something that I have no business doing, and that's playing NFL level football. So I try to give these guys, the slightest bit of respecting and credence. But man, I've watched some Bears games, and it just seems like quarterbacks are able to knit sweaters back there, make some tea, tuck the kids in, make a baby bottle. They can do whatever they want in that pocket. And that's really the biggest problem. And also they're without their star safety and Eddie
Jackson.
Thank you, Eddie Jackson. So, man, they're limited. They're depleted. And on top of that, it just seems like they lack talent on the defensive lines. Only 16 sacks on the season. That's basically an average of 1 sack per game. Maybe actually less than that because there's 17 games in the season.
They right now are struggling in all facets of the game, and the Eagles are catching the Bears at the right time. And Tom, because you were here the first 3-4 days of the week, I was worried about this game just from a purely trap game aspect. They're coming off not only a key rivalry game against the Giants, but one that turned into a blowout. They've got the Cowboys coming up in just 6 days thereafter, Christmas Eve day game, a Saturday game, rather than Sunday game. So a shortened week, not a terribly short, not Thursday night, but one less day to prepare and get ready. And everybody's thinking about the holidays and everything else. That maybe they say, I got to be ready for the Cowboys. Let me get my Christmas shopping done this week. This had trap written all over it. Lesser opponent, coming off a rivalry game, heading toward a huge rivalry game. The only team that really can do anything to knock the Eagles' season off the tracks even a little bit. But as I did my homework and broke down the numbers and watched the tape that I needed to watch, the Bears just don't have it. There's not a path to the Bears being competitive in this game. And it was all about, for me, the Eagles not being completely in the moment and maybe taking the Bears a little bit too lightly. I guess we should all thank Micah Parsons because, he kind of got everybody back on track and everybody focused. And Bears. They're not going to stub their toe against the Bears here this week, are they?
I don't anticipate that. And you bring up that's a funny way of looking at it, right? Michael Parsons kind of did us a favor, getting us refocused on the task at hand. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I didn't think about it from the perspective. But for me, it goes back to the quarterback position for the Philadelphia Eagles. I always say, and I've learned this by, watching the game, and I've learned this by listening to guys like you, John McMullen, Rob Ellis, Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Seth Joyner. I've learned this from you guys, and that's the fact that teams take on the identity of their coaches and also take on the identity of their starting quarterback. And Jalen Hurts has shown that he is not the type to look too far ahead. He's not the type to look too far back in the rearview mirror. Jalen Hurts is someone who stays in the moment. He stays in the grind, and he doesn't allow outside external forces to dictate how he plays football. Now, granted, he's human. I'm sure he hears everything. He hears everything. He knows everything going on around him, around this league. And he said something in one of his press conferences that really stood out to me. He said, I carry my scars everywhere I go. And that speaks to me, that speaks to him knowing all the doubters and knowing everything they've said about him and still elevating above what people have deemed him to be. So this team is led by the right guy. I've never felt this comfortable as a supporter of the Eagles. I've never felt this comfortable as a fan within the quarterback position from a mental perspective. Maybe Nick Foles because he's such a cool customer, but I've never felt this comfortable from a leadership standpoint. And I think it goes a long way. And this team will go as far as he takes them.
And he's got other guys like Kelsey to be able to share that leadership with. But I'm with you. I don't think if they didn't have as good a Hall of Fame center and a leader as Jason Kelsey, I still think the Eagles would be in very good shape because of the quarterback that they have. Hurts really does command the respect of his teammates, even in his still relatively young. And I think from time to time, we underemphasize that. Last year was his first year as a starting quarterback. So he's in his second year as a starting quarterback, third year in the league, year one being a year that no one thought he was going to play. Nobody saw Carson Wentz basically going in the crapper. So for him, and we keep talking about the fact that he came into the NFL at a young age, year younger than most quarterbacks do. His ability to take a hold of a locker room is unparalleled, certainly here in Philadelphia with what we've seen. All right, so if the Eagles can handle the Bears, and we're going to get our Bears reporter Zach Pearson up here in just a couple of minutes. Are the Jaguars going to do the Eagles the biggest favor? Is Dougie P going to lend a major helping hand to his former team and pick off the Cowboys this week?
It's funny you say that because I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I had a problem with what Micah Parsons said. I've been hearing you and John, you guys aren't really buying into it, right? And for me, my biggest issue was the fact that, hey, you're looking a little too far ahead, my man. You still have one more hurdle to jump over before you get to us. Focus on your plate. My mom always told me, young man, you're not touching these honey buns, you're not touching these cookies until you finish that spaghetti on your plate. You're not touching none of these goodies until you finish dinner. So, I approach it from that mindset. Focus on what's in front of you. And I wouldn't put it past the Dallas Cowboys to drop one on the road in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is starting to find his groove. He's starting to find his swing. He was just Offensive Player of the Week this past week. So that's something you have to pay attention to. And Dallas Cowboys have shown to play down the competition. They've shown that they've had chinks in the armor. That Houston Texans game, I don't think it's been talked about enough. They went down to the brink. At least when the Philadelphia Eagles played them, they got a handle of the game in the second half. Right? They went down to the final minute, the final 10, 15 seconds of that game. They had to go on a 90-yard, 80-yard drive, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure.
Which, to their credit, they did. They had to go 95 yards.
Yeah. And they did it, and I give them absolute credit. That's respect, but it's the Houston Texans, and you couldn't register a sack on their quarterback, not one bit. Where was Micah then? So I think Micah needs to focus on the Jacksonville Jaguars because they're going up against a better quarterback in Trevor Lawrence and better players at the skill position.
And, oh, by the way, Jacksonville, the Jaguars mascot, might be out there in his Speedo doing some twerking at Micah Parsons, which should be interesting to see if Micah notices him the same way he notices the MVP status of Jalen Hurts. All right, Tony Shields in for John McMullen. J-Mac had to take off early. The coach is having a media session, which they gather some pretty good information for the upcoming game. So Johnny Mac gets out early on Friday. Tony Shields jumping into his spot. Coming up next, we hope to hear from Zach Pearson, who is the Bears reporter for BearReport.com. He was on the channel earlier this week. Tone said he did a good job. Hopefully he does so for us again. Next, Zach Pearson will join us here on Birds 365.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense during retirement? Are most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks? Taxes are historically low today, but we're facing significant headwinds in the future. Do you have a plan? The Thrive Financial team has more than 100 years of experience helping people across the Delaware Valley with forward-looking tax planning. Learn how to shift your money from forever tax to no or low tax accounts. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB YouTube channel. You got me, Jody Mack, with Tone to Shields in for Johnny Mack, and joining us to talk Bears for the next 15, 20 minutes from BearReport.com, Zach Pearson. Zach, thanks for jumping in. Before you came aboard, Tone and I were trying to figure out exactly how many times Justin Fields is going to have to run the ball this Sunday. I'm thinking about setting the over at like 21. You don't have a quarterback running 21 times, but the Bears might this Sunday. Am I setting it too low?
Well, thanks for having me on. I don't know. In order for the Bears to win this game, Justin Fields is going to have to just be very, very special and play out of his mind. It's crazy because when he came back from that shoulder injury after missing one game last week or 2 weeks ago against Green Bay, he actually didn't really have that many designed run calls, and he actually looked way better as a passer outside of those 2 interceptions that he threw late in the game. But I think that was a little more of them trying to protect him with his shoulder, maybe not take as many hits. On Sunday, I don't know. He's probably going to have to run the ball a lot, at least 10 times for them to win this game, because I just don't know where they're going to beat the Eagles. I think if they have a shot, it's going to be him scrambling on the outside, making plays with his feet, maybe keeping plays alive, throwing the ball. Problem is, they really don't have anyone to throw to at all in this offense. I mean, Cole Kmet's probably their best wide receiver at tight end. Darnell Mooney's hurt right now. Chase Claypool's probably not going to play. He's throwing to Byron Pringle. He's throwing to N'Keal Harry, Dante Pettis, Velus Jones Jr. It's a bunch of guys that are, no offense to him, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 on a lot of other teams.
Hey there, Zach. Thanks again for coming onto the platform. You're beginning to become a regular on JAKIB Sports. We had you on from the football playbook earlier this week. Appreciate you as always. I have a question, right? Justin Fields, he's a quarterback that I believe is probably one of the more talented guys in his draft class, and he came in with a very unique skill set. And when he first got here, it seemed like the Bears were trying to fit him into this prototypical quarterback mold, forcing him to drop back 5-7-step drop backs, kind of like Aaron Rodgers-esque a little bit, just trying to force him to be something he kind of wasn't, and didn't really lean into what he did well, and that was, really utilize his athletic ability. Why did it take this long for the Bears coaching staff to really lean into what Justin Fields does well?
Yeah, I think he was dealt kind of a bad hand last year. I think he was in a position where Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace wanted to save their jobs. They needed to save their jobs. And from the start, they went with Andy Dalton. They were not even going to give Justin Fields a shot in training camp last year at all. I was at pretty much every training camp practice. Justin Fields was the better quarterback, hands down, way better than Andy Dalton. They still stuck with him until Dalton got hurt. And then they kind of played this game where it was rotation in and out. Even when Dalton was healthy and Fields was healthy, they kind of went back to Dalton. I think this year they saw, okay, we have to be a run-first team. We have a couple of good backs in David Montgomery. We have Khalil Herbert. Justin Fields can use his legs as well. It wasn't working out for the first couple of games, and I think Luke Getsy, something clicked and was like, okay, let's get Fields on the move. If you look at last year, his best game was against Pittsburgh. He was on the move. He was rolling out, and this was a different regime. He was rolling out on the move, making plays down the field, throwing the ball, running the ball. I think they saw that and said, okay, we really need to get that into our game plan as well as his legs and put him in good situations. We're not going to come out here and throw it deep every single time. We're not going to take chances, 20, 30-yard passes. That's just not what the offense was. It's developing into that a little bit as we go. I think Getsy and Matty Rifus saw it as, okay, we have, like you said, we have someone special. We have a special skill set. The NFL is changing. Look at all these quarterbacks. Look at Jalen Hurts. Look at, Justin Fields. Guys like that, even Kyler Murray to an extent before he was getting, before he was hurt. Mobile quarterbacks, guys that can use their legs, guys that use their arm are becoming what the NFL is. Not fully, but, it's starting to develop that way. And I think the Bears finally realized, okay, like we really have to use this guy's skill set because he has no weapons. He just has no weapons at all.
All right, other than Justin Fields taking off and running with it, who are they going to lean on to run the football tomorrow? If they can, if they're not down 14-0 before they blink, if the game is actually competitive after a quarter, who's going to get those carries for the Bears tomorrow?
It's going to be David Montgomery will be the workload. Khalil Herbert's out. He can't return until next week against Buffalo. If they were both playing, it would have been more of like a 50-50 true split. I actually think they prefer Herbert right now over Montgomery. But since he won't be out there, it's going to be Montgomery. And that's not a bad thing. He played well against Green Bay. He's a guy who, he doesn't have the speed to kind of break away. You won't see many long, like 60, 70-yard big runs at all. But he's a guy, he's hard to bring down. He'll fall forward. He'll break a couple tackles, maybe turn a 4 or 5-yard play into, 7, 8 yards, something like that. A guy I'm very intrigued by is Darrington Evans. He's a veteran, came from Appalachian State, played at Tennessee with the Titans. He's probably their best pass catching back right now. He's made a couple plays in that area. So, in terms of running, it'd be Montgomery. But if Fields has to scramble, kind of dump it off, I think they'll target Evans a little more.
Zach, what's been your evaluation of Matt Eberflus as the head coach? Is this team beginning to buy into what he's selling?
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of weird because they're 3-10. They're out of the playoffs. They've had, I think, 6 or 7 chances this year in the fourth quarter to come down in one-score games and take the lead, and they just haven't been able to do it at all this year. And that's kind of, one of those stats where you look at it and you're like, wow, like that's sad. That's not good. Maybe players are kind of not buying in. That's just not the case at all. I think they know what's going on. This is a complete rebuild. It's a complete teardown. They traded their best player on defense, Roquan Smith. I mean, they traded a good pass rusher at the time last year. A good pass rusher last year in Robert Quinn. They kind of knew what was happening, but they're buying into it. It's a process. I mean, they're going to have a lot of money to spend. They're going to have a top 3 to 4 draft pick. And while it's hard for players to accept and they want to win, I think they kind of understand, like, yeah, even if, we do lose, we're still building something. That's really hard, for a lot of players to grasp, but he has not, lost that locker room at all. They've had some frustrating moments, losing their leader, Eddie Jackson, to an ankle injury. They're completely bought in still. They know. I mean, they have 4 really tough games coming up. I think they're going to go 0-4. I think they could beat Minnesota if they rest their starters and possibly beat Detroit. But it could get a little rougher. I still think, though, they're all fully bought in. He's a team-first guy. He wants to oversee the team. He doesn't want to be like Matt Nagy, where he was, only offense and had to have the offensive game plan and play calling. Eberflus kind of connects well to every player, every unit. He cares about every player on this team, and it's kind of refreshing to see since, what we've had here.
You've got a problem on defense when a safety leads the team in sacks. Yeah, I know Seattle had that with Adams, but he really is a one-of-a-kind type player. Is Jaquan Brisker that good? It's 3 sacks. We're not talking about a big number here. He's got 3 sacks, but 3 sacks lead the Bears this year. Are they just completely incapable of generating any kind of pass rush?
It's crazy because when you talk about Jaquan Brisker, like, I think the better parts of his game are not even with the sack stat. Like, I think he's better in coverage. He's better in the run game. So I think he's a really good player. The sacks have obviously come off of blitzes. Their defensive line is almost historically bad. Like, they are not generating any pressure at all. They didn't touch Aaron Rodgers. I think the only time Aaron Rodgers hit the ground last week was when he tripped maybe on a scramble by himself. It's bad. And it was bad. A lot of people are, they traded Robert Quinn. They have Robert Quinn wasn't great here to start this season.
Not this season.
And that wasn't making a difference at all early on. So they don't have anyone. They cut Kyrus Tonga, who's in Minnesota, who's playing pretty well. He was kind of an unproven guy. They went with Justin Jones, Dominique Robinson, a 5th-round pick who was playing wide receiver a couple years ago in college. Travis Gibson has not really panned out. So they're just not getting, like, they don't have a true 3 technique to disrupt games. They don't have a true pass rusher on the defensive line. It's actually the complete opposite. If you look at Philadelphia, they have multiple guys. I mean, any guy they throw in there is pretty much getting pressure. Chicago, it's just the opposite. No one's getting pressure. So, if they do get pressure, it's coming off blitzes. And you look, and so it's Brisker has 3 sacks. I believe undrafted rookie Jack Sanborn has 2.5. He's a linebacker, so that's coming off a blitz. And Roquan Smith has, I think, 2.5 or 3 sacks. And he doesn't even play for the Bears anymore, and he's still right up there. And those are off blitzes. So Alan Williams doesn't like the blitz traditionally, going back to his days in Indianapolis. I think he's had to a little more just because they haven't gotten pressure. So I think if they're going to try and disrupt Hurts, they might have to send an extra guy. But I don't know if their defense is good enough to protect if they do send that extra guy.
Yeah, the Bears, they had a lot of draft picks this year. Over the past offseason. They didn't have a first-round pick, but they brought in, some DBs, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker. They brought in a bunch of other young guys, Velus Jones, Braxton Jones, Tristan Ebner. What's been your evaluation from this draft class? Are these guys showing signs that they can play in this league long term? Overall, what have you seen from this draft class that gives you hope for the Chicago Bears in the long term?
Yeah, when I looked at this draft class and it was kind of unfolding there in April, a lot of guys that are very athletic. It feels like Ryan Poles kind of took some chances on guys. And as I mentioned, Dominic Robinson was playing wide receiver and quarterback like 5 years ago. He's a raw talent. A lot of development too. That's kind of obvious. You obviously want to develop guys, but like a lot of guys that they're banking on develop into really good players. So far, I think they have a future starter at left tackle, Braxton Jones, a 5th-round pick out of Southern Utah. I think he's been really good. He's played some of the better pass rushers so far. He's gone up against Micah Parsons, gone up against Montez Sweat. Those are 2 guys, you guys are pretty familiar with in the NFC East. He's gone up against Green Bay's pass rusher, San Francisco's. He got beat early on in the season. I think he's only allowed 1 or 2 sacks the past 4 or 5 games. He's been probably one of their better players on offense. Velus Jones kind of been a disappointment, really hasn't gotten going, fumble problems. Tristan Ebner's not really gotten going, even though he's gotten some run with the injuries at running back. Their best players have pretty much come Jaquan Brisker and undrafted free agent Jack Sanborn at linebacker. Brisker looks like a stud, former Penn State guy, plays that traditional strong safety, which has helped Eddie Jackson stay at free safety. And Sanborn's just been a tackling machine. I mean, it's crazy. Like, he's racked up. He has a 16-tackle game, a 13-tackle game. He's all over the field. The interesting one for me is Kyler Gordon. He was there in the second round when a lot of people, their first pick they took in the second round, a lot of people wanted to take wide receiver. A lot of them wanted to take George Pickens or, someone like Sky Moore. They took Kyler Gordon, and he played on the outside, and he played slot at Washington. And they put him right away in the slot. And a lot of people are like, well, you just put a second-round pick in the slot. Well, a lot of defenses are nickel defenses right now. He's struggled, but he's played really well as of late. He did miss a couple games with a concussion. I'm curious to see how him and Brisker hold up against these wide receivers that the Philadelphia has. Are they going to be able to stay with them? Are they going to be able to cover them all game? I think it's going to be a good test for both of those kids. And if they fail, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's actually really good. You should fail at times to get better. So I'd keep an eye on Gordon. He'll probably primarily be in the slot unless there's some injuries. 2 other guys quickly to keep an eye on are undrafted. Jalen Jones out of Ole Miss, Josh Blackwell out of Duke, both defensive backs who have played pretty well, thrown in there with injuries. Again, who's going to cover Devonta Smith? Will the Bears shadow A.J. Brown with Jalen Johnson? Quez Watkins, who's going to guard him? It's going to be tough to watch at times.
Understood. And by the way, putting value on a cover corner in the NFL in 2022 is not as outrageous as it used to be.
Yeah.
I do a solid for any of the Eagle fans, Eagle Nation, who are getting on a plane later this afternoon or tomorrow. What's the weather supposed to be like at game time?
Bundle up. It's going to be about 24, 25 degrees. That doesn't sound awful, but the stadium's right on the lake, and the wind is going to be rolling. I think the wind's like 16, 17 miles per hour. That's where it gets cold. Bundle up, put on a hat, get some coffee, maybe some beer, keep yourself warm.
The coffee's a possibility, but it won't just be creamer added to that coffee.
Exactly. Yeah,
probably the best way to go. Yeah.
It's crazy here in Chicago. Like, I'm sure you guys had kind of the same weather, but it was like 45 the other day, and then it's going to drop down to like 20 like tomorrow. And, it could be freezing next week, and then it could be 50s the week after. It's just our weather is so wacky. But, yeah, it's going to be a little cold. So
let me follow up there, Tone. Thanks. Where are they at in the process of a new stadium? Because they've been Soldier Field forever, redid it, built it back up again, but it is past its usefulness time, and they bought the land in the suburbs.
Yep.
How is that proceeding? What kind of timeline we looking at for the Bears to get a new home?
Yeah, so it's still going through the process. They're still getting the approvals, all that. I believe they hired someone for design. They have to get the approval in the contract, the land contract signed, all that, I believe is where they're at. It's kind of one of those things where news pops up like every 2 to 3 months on something different. So realistically, the move would probably be 2026 would be the stadium opening, 2027. In my opinion, I think they're gone. I don't think you get this involved with that land in that project, and you're not this deep in talks unless something just absolutely goes wrong. Like they get out there and they realize, oh man, like the land, we really can't build on it. That's not going to happen.
They find dinosaur bones. Is that what you're saying? The only way to
Indian burial ground or something.
Hey, here's the crazy thing. It's an old horse racing track. So you not know what you find out there when you start to dig. But no, they're gone. I mean, it just makes sense. Look at all these new stadiums. Soldier Field is the least capacity in the NFL. It's really hard to get to. It's a pain. I mean, I live 15 minutes away, and it takes me 40 minutes on game days, 40, 50 minutes to get down there. That's if I leave at 9 a.m. for a noon game, which is just insane to me. But, yeah, they need it. They're gone. I think they're going to have one of the better stadiums in the NFL when it gets there. And I'm excited for it. I know people like tradition. I'm excited for a new stadium.
Nice.
Yeah, I was just thinking the Bears, they're coming off of their bye week. And I'm curious to know what new wrinkles should the Philadelphia Eagles expect or be keen to from the Bears, in particular on offense, because we know Justin Fields is still a developing product. We know they are limited from the skill position, but they have done some things to scheme Justin Fields. See, I keep saying Jalen Hurts; they're so similar, right?
Yeah.
But they have done plenty of things to cut the field in half for Justin Fields and make his job easier. So, are there any new wrinkles that you are anticipating that maybe the Philadelphia Eagles should look out for from this Bears offense?
So I'm glad you said the Fields and Hurts are similar, because that's what we really hope here in Chicago. Like we really hope that we have a guy like that finally. In terms of like new wrinkles, the only thing I would like see is maybe getting Velus Jones more involved with his speed, maybe some jet sweeps, maybe some quick screens. Maybe they can have a play action pass down the field. Other than that, man, you guys are going to see a pretty basic game plan. It's just, like I said, it's a bunch of wide receivers that can't really get open deep down the field. They don't have a burner to beat you. Jones would probably be that burner. And the one chance he had against Dallas, he dropped the ball in a deep pass that kind of would have changed that game. Maybe the Bears could have pulled off the upset there. I would just, maybe those quick plays, those quick screens, the quick outs, those jet sweeps, maybe a couple of pitches for him in the backfield. That'd be pretty much the big wrinkle. I think their game plan is going to be, we're going to try and run the ball with David Montgomery. We're going to try to run with Justin Fields, more designed runs. And we're just going to take a basic game plan, take the safe throws, because they just don't have, like, Chase Claypool's not going to play. EQ St. Brown is probably their next best deep threat, which is kind of a positive. He did beat Jair Alexander last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't see it happening again. So, yeah, I would say kind of just getting Velus Jones involved, maybe some trick plays. I don't know. I do think they'll be aggressive, though. I don't think against the Eagles, you're facing the best team in the NFL right now. You could take chances. If it's 4th and 6 from your 40, you could take, or their 40, you could take a chance like that. They'll probably pass up field goals, maybe go for touchdowns. I think they're going to have to do that type of thing.
All right, Zach, last one from me. On a personal note, I noticed your writing and Twitter and the like. You chose not to ask any Bears this week about Jalen Hurts' MVP status. Did you not do that because it would have been shooting fish in a barrel? that they don't really have someone on defense that's meritorious of answering that question, that they don't have a star who's good enough to be able to make a statement on the MVP. Why didn't you go down that road? Come on, it was a layup, big guy. You could have taken it.
Let's see. There's it's 8:42. I have to be up there by 11, so there's still a chance because we do get open locker room today.
This afternoon? I'll be on your Twitter all afternoon.
Yeah. So here's what
break.
Here's what I'll say. If I do talk to someone defensively and I ask them that, I think they'll have a more respectful answer.
Yeah,
and I think
probably.
they'll praise. I think they'll praise Jalen Hurts because I think they understand. Like, I think Jalen Hurts has taken that step forward. And the Eagles have done a great job. And nothing against them. The Eagles have done a great job surrounding him with talent, which is what we want in Chicago. But Jalen Hurts is also playing really damn well too. So when I saw that whole thing with Parsons, I was like, wow, okay, it's kind of interesting. Like I checked the schedule. When does Dallas and Philly play again next? Because that's one of those ones where your offensive linemen kind of stand up for you in the game. But yeah, no, I think they'd have a more respectful answer because I do think they've played some pretty good quarterbacks this year. I think Hurts will be up there, probably top 3-ish, top 2 in terms of quarterbacks they've played. And I think they know the challenge that's ahead, man. I've watched a couple of Eagles games this year. He's good. He's really good. And I kind of hope the Bears go down this path. Get Fields a number 1 wide receiver, get him some more weapons, and hopefully he can be what Hurts is. You know, maybe I don't want to make anyone mad in the comments. Maybe better. I don't know. We don't know what Justin Fields' ceiling is. I don't know what Jalen Hurts' ceiling is. I think he could get better as well. So we'll see. But I think they're interesting, comparable quarterbacks too.
Now,
final one for me.
And then you got
go ahead. You're good.
What is Eddie Jackson's status?
Oh, he's out. He's out for the year. Yeah,
But is he? The reason I asked the question is he still with the team? Is he there in the locker room?
Yes.
No, he's not going to play this week. But is he there? Because he's the only Alabama guy you got.
Yeah,
so I'm figuring if anybody's going to, A, he's your best defensive player, even though he's not playing, and B, he's an Alabama guy. If there's one guy, and I don't want to do your job for you, but if you're going to ask anybody in that locker room today about Jalen Hurts, I would circle Eddie Jackson's name if he's going to be there, or is he rehabbing on his own?
I've not seen him in the locker room since he got hurt. I did see him after the game against Green Bay in the locker room, and I talked to him off the record a little bit just to see how he was doing and you know if that ankle's doing better, stuff like that. So I was talking to a rookie, Elijah Hicks, who's pretty much played in his spot alongside DeAndre Houston-Carson. And during my interview, Elijah was like, I have to hold on 1 second, and went up to Eddie, and Eddie came up to him. So he's a guy that a lot of these young players in the secondary lean on, which is still important because if you're not on the field, I still think you can have value in mentoring these young guys who are getting their chance, mentoring Jaquan Brisker, mentoring Elijah Hicks, Jalen Jones, Josh Blackwell, guys like that. So he is around the team. He's helping out. I don't think he'll be in the locker room today. So if I can't ask him today and I see him in the locker room after the game, I'll ask him after the game what he saw. Because I'm sure he'll be at the game, probably up in a box watching.
Final one from me, Zach. Once again, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah.
The Bears traded for Chase Claypool mid-season, and it made me think, what has been your evaluation of him as an asset to Justin Fields? Because again, Justin Fields, he's being compared to different guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, so on and so forth, but most comparably to Jalen Hurts. And the Eagles brought in a big body physical wide receiver like an AJ Brown. Now, I'm not comparing Chase Claypool to AJ Brown, but from a physicality standpoint, from a measurable standpoint, they're kind of similar. And it makes me think about the potential blueprint for a guy like Justin Fields, right? Getting him that big body wide receiver with a large catch radius. What do you think should be the long-term blueprint for Justin Fields? And does Chase Claypool play is he a vital cog in that long-term blueprint?
I think he's going to have to be because the pick they traded for him was their own second, and that's going to be 33, 34, 35 range come April. The move to get Claypool wasn't necessarily for this year. I think Ryan Poles looked at that free agent class and was like, oh boy, there's not many good options out there at wide receiver. Let's go out and try to take a chance on a guy who seemed disgruntled in Pittsburgh, but flashed talent. It hasn't been there so far. He just hasn't really caught up with the playbook just yet. He hasn't been on the same page as Justin Fields. He had to play a game with Trevor Siemian after Fields got hurt, so that really didn't help him out. I think a full offseason will know a better answer on Claypool. I don't imagine the Bears thinking him as the true number one. I think he could be a good number 2, good number 3 with Darnell Mooney. I don't think either of them are number 1 wide receivers. Their plan has to be kind of what Philadelphia went out and did, kind of what Miami went out and did. The only problem is I don't think there's going to be an A.J. Brown or a Tyreek Hill out there available come free agency or trade. Free agency class is not good. I don't know which veterans, maybe someone like DeAndre Hopkins, but he's going to be 31. I don't know if they'd go that route. I think they have a couple options. I think that first pick they're going to have, number 2, number 3 overall, they're either going to trade back, pick up a lot of draft picks, which is going to be smart to do, or they're going to try and take a game-changing player on the defensive line. Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Miles Murphy out of Clemson, and then go for a wide receiver. Because if we look at these last couple drafts, man, wide receivers in the 2nd round, wide receivers in the 3rd round have really produced, and you can find some gems there. I think that's going to be their game plan. If they do trade, maybe they can land, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison in the teens if they fall back. They have to find a number 1 wide receiver. I think they're starting to build their weapons, but the philosophy should be bulk up your offensive line, protect Justin Fields, give him weapons to throw because he's a rookie. He's on his rookie contract. You can't be wasting these years and stunting his development at all. So that would be my plan if I were Ryan Poles.
Zach, good stuff. Hope you can make it over to the difficult to get to stadium before they actually kick off on Sunday. I know you'll be well warm. You get it in the off the lake effect.
Yeah.
Should be at least entertaining. Don't know if it's going to be competitive, but it should be entertaining on Sunday. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Yeah, thanks anytime, guys. I really appreciate it. If anyone going to the game, any fans, Pequod's for pizza. Best pizza you'll have in Chicago.
What's the name of the place? Heard of it.
Pequod's. Yep.
Pequod's Pizza?
Yes. I'm not a deep dish guy, so I do like the thin slice.
Yeah, I'm more of a thin crust guy myself, actually.
Yeah, thin crust.
Then Pequod's it is.
Pequod's and Salerno's. Those are my 2 favorites in Chicago.
I'm a Rosebud guy in Chicago, but that's full meal, not pizza.
Oh,
stuff.
Man. That's fantastic, too. I recommend that as well.
Zach, good stuff. Appreciate you coming on board with us. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Take it easy.
You got it. Zach Pearson from BearReport.com here with us on Birds 365. All right, come back. I text Johnny Mac. I go, hey, you forgot to give us a score. Or I forgot to ask him the score. I have the McMullen score. I'll give you mine. Tone's going to give you his. We need to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense during retirement? Are most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks? Taxes are historically low today, but we're facing significant headwinds in the future. Do you have a plan? The Thrive Financial team has more than 100 years of experience helping people across the Delaware Valley with forward-looking tax planning. Learn how to shift your money from forever tax to no or low tax accounts. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
All right, putting a bow on the show here on 365. It's all over but for the shouting. And I will shout out John McMullen's prediction for the Eagles and the Bears. He texted me 31-15. Eagles dispense with Chicago. That means a cover of a 9-point spread. They win by 16. I'll give you my pick last. All right, Tone, what do you see as far as a final score goes between the Eagles and the Bears?
I think the Philadelphia Eagles win this game 34-17. I think the Bears are going to score in that first quarter. I think they score a field goal in the second. I think the game gets out of hand in the third, and I think they score a late touchdown because the Eagles begin to rest guys because the game is just so far to reach. So 34-17 Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, another relatively easy victory for the Eagles. And you know, you were here, you produce a show every day. I was leaning toward this being competitive, that I feared the Eagles might come in just a little bit of a peek ahead to the Dallas Cowboys. And the more effort and time I put into it, and thank you, Micah Parsons, for if there was any chance that the Eagles were going to lose focus and look past this one, him questioning the quarterback's MVP status, I think got everybody back on focus. I'll take Johnny Mac's score and use it as a barometer. He thinks Eagles are going to score 31 points. Yeah, I think they'll score slightly more. I think he's in the neighborhood. I'll go 33. And yeah, I'm going to give the Bears a little bit more of a nod. I think Justin Fields will actually complete some passes, which has not been his forte this year. It's been more him taking off and running with it. I think that the Eagles will be, you talk about light boxes. They're not going to worry about him on going up the middle. So I think they'll do a better job at shutting him down. I gave this question out a couple of times during the week, though. 75 yards rushing for Justin Fields. That's what he averages per game this year. I think the Eagles actually hold him under that because I think they know that. He doesn't have, it seems on paper that he doesn't have other options. I think he's going to find Cole Kmet and the Aquaminius Brown may make a play or two. And I think he's going to be under on yards rushing, but over on yards throwing, which he averages like 158, which is not a whole hell of a lot. I think he's going to throw for 200. So I'd go under on the rushing, over on the passing. I give the Bears 20 points, which means the game isn't really all that close. If you're looking at the line, the Eagles are a 9-point favorite. I got them winning 33-20, so that's a cover. So John has them covering. Tone has them covering. I have them covering. You know the Eagles are now going to win this game by only 8 points. Now that we've all said, yeah, go ahead, lay the 9, the Eagles are only going to win by 8. But we shall see. Tone, good job stepping in for Johnny Mac today. Thank you much, buddy. I will talk to you on Monday. You'll be back producing on Monday, correct?
Oh, as always, my man. You can't get rid of me that easily.
All right, there we go. So come Monday, after another Eagles victory over the Bears, we'll be back here on Birds 365. That would be me, Tone, and Johnny Mac. We'll all be back in 2 and 2 days, that is.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, We're talking about it, debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.